Good morning, everyone. This is Bernd Christian Giels coming to you once again from Cape Cod. Today is Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. It is my mother's birthday, so I am celebrating that today. And it is a lovely day here on the Cape. A little bit warm, but the breeze this morning has been quite lovely, so that is a refreshing thing to enjoy before the sun bakes us later this afternoon. So today in this episode, I am celebrating another one of my top influencers. What is a top influencer, you ask? A top influencer for me is someone who has profoundly affected my life through their work, whether it's music, research, or simply the person that they are in the world. These are the people whose contributions to the world have radically influenced who I became as a person. In today's episode, I am honoring a Native American man whose music has deeply touched my heart ever since the first time I heard it. Sadly, I have not had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman in person, but I would love the opportunity if ever he should come remotely close to where I live. I am speaking about none other than R. Carlos Nakai. He is a renowned musician who is of Navajo Ute heritage. Mr. Nakai is known as the world's premier performer of the Native American flute, as noted on his website. He was originally trained in both classical trumpet and music theory and has been offering music to the world for decades now. According to his website, in 2014, Canyon Trilogy reached platinum level, which is over 1 million units sold, which was the first ever for a Native American artist performing traditional solo flute music. If you want to learn more about Mr. Nakai, I welcome you to read his biography on his website. His website is rcarlosnakai.com. So, I'm going to speak now a little bit about why I found him so influential. And basically, it's simply the quality, the cadence, the depth of his music. I particularly have never played the flute myself. My mother is known to have played the flute when she was a young woman. I don't recall any times with her when she played the flute in my presence, but knowing my mother being as talented as she was, I would not be surprised if perhaps she did play the flute when I was around as a baby, and I just don't have any memory of it since it was probably that early in my life. So, Mr. Nakai has inspired me because his music it has a quality that when I listen to it, takes me to a place in my mind and my heart that is so deep and powerful. One of my favorite things to do that I've done in my life in the past is at the end of my day to pull up one of his tracks of music on YouTube and listen to it for 30 minutes or an hour or even longer and just appreciate the instrumental beauty of one single man playing one instrument that nonetheless creates such an incredible, beautiful string of notes that, for me, it takes me to another place in time. When I listen to Nakai's music, it's as if the whole world stops. Like time stops, my whole life outside of that moment stops, and suddenly I feel as if everything is right in my life and everything is right with the world. And there are not a lot of musicians out there that can necessarily create something that takes me to such a place. I have had the great pleasure of experiencing that sort of altered consciousness with other musicians, but oftentimes some of these other musicians, the music that they have crafted, takes me to different feelings, whether it's profound sadness, profound joy, or perhaps a deep feeling of wistfulness. When I listen to Nakai's music, one of the things that often happens in my mind is that I imagine just the most incredible, beautiful natural landscapes of the world, things that would make a photographer virtually fall over from the sheer beauty of such places. So I think about the oceans sometimes, the beautiful, most untouched forests of the world, the sky at night, up on a mountain with basically no light pollution, and you find yourself under an incredible crushing number of stars. These amazing vistas, these places untouched by the hand of man and woman, these are the kinds of places that I sometimes go to in my own imagination when I listen to the amazing, beautiful work, the beautiful music of R. Carlos Nakai. Now, one reason that I especially appreciate Nakai's music is not just the music itself, but the fact of who it's coming from, of Nakai's particular background. And by that I mean that when I was a young man of 23 years of age, I spent about 4 months of my life living on a Native American reservation and working with the Lakota people in central South Dakota. This was a profound, life-altering experience for me. It was my first experience outside of the trips I made to Germany as a child, in which I experienced a very, very different culture from the one that I grew up in. And as I noted in a different earlier episode here on my channel, it was very profound for me because it was a complete cultural immersion experience, essentially. Now, I did have contact with other white people while I was there. Some of the priests that I worked with, some of the Jesuits, were also obviously white men. So it's not as if I was completely cut off from access to any culture that I remotely recognized. But it was still a profoundly different experience. And one of my favorite experiences of the time that I was on the reservation that I didn't share previously on my channel was having the opportunity to participate in Sunday services in the local church and actually hear music sung in the Lakota language and appreciate how much beauty there was listening to people singing in a language so radically different from English and German and any English-related language that it was only natural that I would feel a bit starstruck and captivated by the experience of listening to people singing in the Lakota language. And one of my most vivid memories that I still have was when I listened to this music around the time of Lent. I was living on the reservation between February and late May of the year that I was there. And so during the time of Lent, obviously, there were different celebrations in accordance with the Catholic Church's tradition. And so I had quite an amazing cultural immersion experience of living with a tribal people within the borders of the United States of America and coming to appreciate just how incredibly culturally diverse this country, the United States of America, is. Not just in the culture that I grew up in, not just in Texas where I grew up, but also among the tribal peoples of South Dakota and elsewhere. And it was this experience of living on a Native American reservation that was a fundamental part of laying the foundation for me to later be open to the idea of studying under the direction of a professor who had part of her heritage derived from another native tribe, namely the Oneida people in what is present-day Wisconsin. So this experience when I was a young man living in South Dakota was a radically transforming experience for me. I will never forget it, and not until the day I die will I not appreciate the profound experience I had of living on this reservation and meeting people who were of a radically different cultural background. And as I spent my time there, and as I got to know a little bit about the Lakota people and their history, as much as I possibly could in a mere 3.5 months, I was impressed by the depth of what still was alive and exuberant in their culture. I was impressed by their rituals, and I was especially impressed and touched by the welcome that they extended me as the time passed while I was there living and working on the reservation. One of my favorite memories of the time, besides the music, was having 3 individuals that I had some interaction with, working with, send me some well wishes by calling in when I occasionally assisted at the local radio station. And I was very touched that they remembered me specifically by contacting the radio station. It was a very touching experience for me. And it was an example, I felt, that when we walk past those boundaries that separate us, respectfully, obviously, when we cross into other people's territory, into their cultures, with their permission and with their welcome, we can learn so much about the world and about ourselves. And so because of that experience and many others, I have long been an avid supporter of cross-cultural educational experiences in the many, many forms that can take. And so because of this experience, I was especially touched and probably more open to being touched by the wondrous musical gift and power of Carlos Nakai's music. And what I think about sometimes when I listen to his music is how incredible it is that one person can do so much in the world and can offer so much and can touch the hearts of so many people just by being himself. Nakai has touched so many lives with his music. That is completely clear if you just read through his biography on his website. The amount of music he has performed, the places that he has traveled to, the many ways he has offered his gift. It is very clear that Nakai is truly a giant in the music world, and specifically in the world of those who play the flute. And so when I think about his music, I think about how incredible it is that his ancestors survived what they had to survive, and that he was born into the world, and that he gave this gift of music not just to the people of his own ancestry, but that he gave his music to the world. And not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone wants to give something so deeply from their very hearts and minds to people radically different from them, to people of different cultural backgrounds. And that is obviously because there is plenty of pain and resentment and trauma and horror and anxiety and grievance in the world based on the histories of all the ways that humans have hurt other humans. And so I deeply appreciate and respect Nakai, not just for the music itself, but for his willingness to share his music with the entire world. He is a great example, I feel, of how much beauty there is to be found in the world and to be found in the lives of the Native American peoples of the Americas, and in a contrary way, how much we all can lose when we do not understand or respect or interact with cultures that are different from ours. I can't even imagine a world in which Nakai had never offered his music. It's inconceivable to me that there would be such a world where Nakai had never been born, or he had been born and he had never picked up a flute. That sort of world just is not a world I can really comprehend, at least not easily. He has done so much for the world with his music and touched so many lives that he is a shining star in my mind. He is an influential person, and I am grateful that he has given his music to the entire world to enjoy. And so as I conclude this episode, I invite you, my viewers, to think about how much beauty and how many contributions the different peoples of the world have made to the world. I myself can't imagine my life, not just without ever having heard Nakai's music, but also I can't imagine who I would be if I had never met my primary mentor and friend, Dr. Pamela Colorado of the Worldwide Indigenous Science Network. And if you want to learn more about who she is and what her life's work has been about, I invite you to check out my episode in which I name her as my top influencer, namely influencer number 1 in my Top Influencers sub-series here on my channel. I don't remember the episode offhand, but just browse through my page with the different videos featured and look for the one that says Top Influencer 1, and you will learn more about Dr. Colorado and my experience of her in my life. So, I invite you to think about the people that have been your top influencers, including people that have come from very different cultures, and what you may have learned, what you may have experienced, and how you may have grown by having this person's path cross your own. So that is all for today's episode. I invite you to check out Mr. Nakai's website and learn more about his music and spend an evening with nothing else stimulating your mind and heart other than the beautiful, lovely flute music of Mr. Nakai. That is it for today's episode. I will be back again soon with more content. I welcome you to follow me along and tell your friends, family, colleagues, and pets about me. You all have a great day. This is Barrett Christian Giels signing off.